Starting, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
This is Dr. Richard Barwell, and I'd like to welcome you to Breaking Barriers, and let's move your practice beyond those restrictions you're faced every day. Here's a challenge that has happened to this profession from day one, and that the biggest challenge that we face is how to enroll patients beyond pain relief. And one of the challenges that we face today is the profession has moved more and more in the direction about pain relief only as chiropractic, and this affects all of us. It's just such a huge challenge. And the reason is because people are symptom educated. Across the board, they're symptom educated. And the only group that's really done a great job about getting through this are the dentists, and they've done a super job about preventative care. And here's the problem with all of this, the way we face it. As chiropractors, we're dealing with patients with back pains and neck pains and so on that are all that symptom-based stuff, and they're getting this from the medical profession, who they assume are the authority in all of this. And the medical profession, you have to understand, have no value in a healthy society. If we create a healthy society, they're out of a job, they're out of income. And so you cannot rely on somebody else doing the education to help people move past that concept of pain relief into a wellness belief system. And if you're just sitting there sort of playing that same game, saying, how are you feeling today, Mrs. Brown? And Mrs. Brown is feeling okay, guess what? She's going away. We've lost the opportunity to really, truly bring something of greater value into the picture. And that's what we have to do in order to enroll patients beyond pain relief, is we have to present something of greater value to them than strictly pain relief, even though that may be what they came in for. So why do we get sick? Why do we end up with pain? Where does pain fit into this whole picture? What's the relationship between stress and sickness, or sickness and pain? Those are the things that we need to look at. So the medical model treats symptoms and leaves the cause. That is a simple sort of statement that you need to move into that patient's concept of saying, listen, you know, you came in here because you had a problem. What happens if we saw you before you had the problem and we got to correct it? We know that chiropractic does a very good job of removing symptoms and signs and pain, but why can't it, if it can remove it, why can't it prevent it from happening? That's a concept that the patient needs to be exposed to. You know, you need to introduce the facts on the role of stress in regards to that patient's signs and symptoms or disease, because stress plays a major factor. They haven't considered this because nobody's talking about this. And if you start to talk about this in your practice, you're going to stand out different than the 100 other doctors that are around you, whether they're medical doctors, chiropractors, physical therapists, or massage therapists. If you're talking about stress, you're talking, and how it caused their problem, you're talking a different story than they're getting anywhere else. And that's very important. That's the first stage of uniqueness. So what's the relationship between stress, illness, and disease? Because here's the facts the patients need to know. They need to understand this. Stress facts. Current medical research states that 95% of all diseases and illness are caused by stress. This was published in 1990. This is a long time ago. This is something we need to be paying attention to. Of 25 years ago, they already knew this. Why don't the people know this? So the other 5% are considered to be genetic in nature. So the people all think now that I've got bad genes, that's the cause of my disease and my stress. That's not the case. That's not the case. As a matter of fact, if you follow Bruce Lipton, you'll find out that it's just stress at the genetic level that's created that genetic pattern. So here's the facts. The facts is there's a direct relationship between stress in their life and how healthy or lack of health that they're experiencing. And so patients need to have that next level of information to be able to make the decisions, because that's where it starts to really get important. When the stress is greater than the body's ability to cope with symptoms appear. The only time that they're going to have symptoms, pain, neck pain, back pain, headaches, diabetes, you name it, is when the stressor in their life has overcome the body's ability to deal with it, and the system now starts to break down. the whole purpose of symptoms is for the subconscious to inform the conscious mind that we have a problem. That's the role of symptoms. People don't even think about that. And so if we can keep them from having symptoms, we're much more successful in our care. So that means we have more to offer right off the bat than waiting until you get sick and then try to recover if we can keep you from being sick or experiencing symptoms. There's the first step in why you have a higher level of value than most of the people around you. Ask them this simple question. Ask them, where do they carry their stress? When you find yourself getting under lots of stress, what happens to you? Do you end up with more colds or flus or stomach upsets or headaches, or does your back tend to go into spasm when you get under stress? What happens to you? Do you find that your diabetes gets worse when you're stressed? All of these things are important. And here's what we know about stress. If the people have had a major event in the past year, such as the loss of a friend, or a breakup in marriage, or bankruptcy, something along this line, a motor vehicle accident, they are going to have a major impact on their system from that stressful event. It may not happen the time that the challenge happened to them. It may take a month or 2 months for this to happen. It may take 6 months or even a year, but all of a sudden they're going to start to recognize that, gee, something's really wrong with me. I'm not feeling good. And that's that stress relationship to long-term care. Back pain, headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, heart problems, diabetes, cancer, all of these things, everything is based on stress responses and how that nervous system is in balance or not. So what you can do with them is this: explain the three systems of the body. And one of the problems that happens, especially because of chiropractors up to this point have been so structurally focused, we were all taught about vertebral subluxation is the cause of disease and illness, and we never paused to consider that maybe something else going on here. It's not that there isn't vertebral subluxation, it's that what caused the vertebral subluxation. And so in order to do that, these people need to understand how this fits in relationship to their challenge. So here's the three systems. This is the moment of truth for chiropractic. This is the shift in your thinking that you have to make in your head as a chiropractor in order to communicate this with the patient. There's three systems of the body. The first system of the body is the passive system, the bones and joints. They do nothing on their own. And so we've been so focused on bones and joints and structure without ever once considering to the fact that they aren't the cause of the problem. Something had to move those bones and joints. Something had to create that misalignment that we call vertebral subluxation. And I know trauma, they're always going to want to say trauma. Trauma is the smallest part. The vast majority of that spasms that we see and the fixations that we see that we call vertebral subluxations are emotional in nature. And yet we're not addressing that as the cause. We're addressing that last level response. So the bones and joints are passive. They can't be the cause. The next thing is the active system, the muscles. They create action, but they don't act on their own either. They move the bones and joints, and everything else that happens in the body happens because of muscle activity. But muscles don't do anything on their own either, so they can't be the cause. And then we look at the nervous system, and that's the central organizing authority. That's the thing that causes the muscles to act, that causes the passive system to become misaligned, or causes the digestive system to become hyperactive or not active enough, or that causes the blood pressure to go up because it tightens the muscles in the arteries. I mean, it's all done at that nervous system level. It's the seat of all dysfunction. And so we've been looking at this from chiropractors from that third level of saying it's all about the passive system and structure, when really it's not. It's all about the nervous system, which is our basic belief to begin with. It's just that our dialogue and our concept was backwards to begin with. And we just did what we were taught. Who did what, the teachers that taught us did what they were taught, and somewhere along the line we definitely got off track on that. Then we have this thing that we've created, and it's called the Biochart. And here's what happens with the Biochart. You hand this to a patient, you say, I would like you to check off how this applies to you. Whatever signs and symptoms you may have, just check off on here. And so we see if they have a balanced nervous system, everything is well and good. They're great positive mental health, and they've got good immune system function. And then what happens if we start to see it's under-aroused where the nervous system is not functioning up to its level? We get that poor attention, we get constipation, and low blood pressure, low energy, distraction, all sorts of problems happen at that level. Or we have an over-aroused where we're so stimulated, which by the way about 90% of your patients are, they got so much stress going on, their hands are cold, they're high blood pressure, they've got irritable bowel syndrome, the heart palpitations, you name it, that's going on with them because they're just in so much stress all the time. That's an over-aroused system. Then we have the system that shifts from over-aroused to under-aroused. And that ends up with some in both areas and some in the middle. That means it's even more challenging. And we'll see these people will vary. These are people that their system can be over-aroused one day and under-aroused the next. I mean, it's bipolar in nature. That means it's even worse. It's unstable. You need to know what's going on with these people. And then we have the exhausted nervous system. And you can see that everything down in that exhausted area are autoimmune system disorders that are now exponentially out of control. So here's the thing. The people sign this thing, check off these things, and the very simple question on this would be, so I see that your nervous system is not in balance. We've got all sorts of problems going on. You've got signs and symptoms where your system is trying to tell you it's in trouble and it needs you to get it back into balance again. So what do you think would be more beneficial for you? To just work on getting rid of your signs and symptoms or to work on getting your nervous system back in balance? Which would be of greater value? And that's how you have to ask the question. And they're going to answer it, 99.9% are going to say, getting my nervous system back in balance. And all you have to do at that point is say, that's exactly what our goal is in this office. That's what we focus on. We don't focus on your signs and symptoms. We have ways of measuring how your nervous system is in or out of balance, and we can now measure that as our guide to see how you're doing with your care. The minute that that's happened, we have now shifted the intent of care from relief of signs and symptoms to something of greater value, and that's getting the nervous system back in balance. Up till now, we have not had any way of being able to measure this outside of how are you feeling, Mrs. Brown? Today we can change that. So the suggestion is you use the Biochart in your office. Now, for those of you who don't have the NeuroInfiniti in your office, here's the problem. How do you measure nervous system function? That's really important to be able to take a look at neurophysiology and be able to have some way of objectively measuring it. That's the challenge that we faced, and that's why we ended up going to structure, because we never had that. You ask the patient which is more value, you explain where symptoms fit into the picture, the role of stress in disease, you have your research on this, and we have so much. We have literally 127 hours of recorded research information on chiropractic, stress, and the nervous system in the NBC calls. They happen once a month, and we hand out sheets for you to be able to use in your practice. For those of you that are using them, congratulations. That's how you change the dialogue. You have to have the research in your office on this, otherwise it's just you saying it. And there is so much evidence from the neuroscience field today on chiropractic and the nervous system that it is mind-boggling. The effect of society thinking. Here it is. They think that medicine has all the answers. Why do they think that? Because medicine keeps telling them that. And not just medicine, but big pharma keeps telling them that. To the point where the medical doctors are now in trouble because of the big pharma advertisements that are going on out there claiming that they can cure all this stuff, and they're not telling the truth. Because the truth of the matter is this, and people need to know this. The #1 cause of death in the United States is medical prescription drugs. #1, beyond heart disease, beyond illegal drugs, beyond car accidents, beyond gunshots. The #1 killer now in America is medical prescription drugs. That's the truth of the matter. Does medicine have all the answers? I don't think so. Look at #2. Medical post-op infections is as the second one, is number 2. And so you can ask the patients, if you know this, do you think that medicine has all the answers? Is it time maybe you need to reconsider about what you think health is and health isn't? Is health all about chemicals? Is it about drugs? Do they think that chiropractic is only about structural injury? And that's the answer, is yes, because that's what we've been telling people for the last 50 to 60 years, that that's all we do. I've got to get your back straight. We've got to straighten the curves. Our job is to fix that vertebrae that's stuck in a position, and they think that that's all we have to offer is a straight spine. Chiropractic has so much more to offer that we're selling ourselves short by teaching the public that that's all we have to offer. It's been 117, it's more like 120 years of the strongest opposition, and yet chiropractic is still here. Why? Because it gets the results. And you've got to remember, don't be afraid to say chiropractic gets results. We know this. Proof of cause is needed. Misconceptions over the years are this: illness was caused by bad spirits, illness was caused by bad blood, germs were the cause of disease. This is what everybody thought. But people change their opinion over the years as more information becomes available. And that's the key, the information becoming available in your office. We thought disease was caused by a vertebra pressing on a nerve. That was the foundation of chiropractic over 100 years ago. And it was only that because of somebody observed that correcting a vertebral misalignment brought the hearing back, and therefore the assumption was everything was about correcting that vertebral subluxation. But the question wasn't asked, how did that get there in the first place? And could we have prevented that from happening in the first place? Health and disease relationship was external. It was always out there. It wasn't inside. And better health chemistry, yeah, it's the #1 killer of North Americans today. Better health through chemistry does not work. Not in our food, not in our healthcare system. There has to be a better way of doing this. Education in a nutshell, if there is only one source of information, then it's the standard. And unfortunately today, that's the case. It is the big pharma medical model. That's what everybody gets from high schools on. If you don't believe me, look at the vaccine baloney that's going on. And if you haven't read the rebuttal, in Dr. Mercola's column, you need to. And that whole article on autism that they said didn't cause damage was retracted because it was falsified. That's not being used. So we have to get the information out in our office that changes how people think. Supporting research needs to be shared. You need to be handing it out in your office. You need to have it in a form that people can read it and take it with them as their newsletter. And that's what we do with the NBC calls. Point out all of the current publications. Have them, when you see an article, I don't care if it's in AARP or what it's in, you need to pull it out and have it in your office and show that what's going on with the nervous system and neuroscience and health. And make it fun. You know, have a challenge for people to say, I want you to bring in an article on what you see as improving your nervous system and its relationship to health, or bad chemistry and how it, like McDonald's food, for instance, what it did. Bring it into the office and have them involved in doing your talks. Have a bulletin board up where people can put stuff up that they bring in that supports who you are in your office. Get them involved. Use accurate facts. Make sure that your facts are accurate that you're using. Don't make them up. Have more than one level of education. That's a very important step. You cannot take people from point A and have them understand, energy feelings when they think that medicine's the answer. You have to go very slowly. You have to do a step-by-step with the education. Short and sweet beats long and boring. And that's what our goal is with these presentations that we're doing now, these 3 that we're going to do. They're going to be short, sweet, and lots of information with it. Moving the patient's perspective, patients need to set their own goals. That's the critical part, because if you're setting the goals for them, they're not enrolled. They have to set their own goals. You have to ask the questions that get them to set the correct goals. After making an education point, ask for their conclusion. So, which do you think would be more valuable for you, Mrs. Brown? Getting rid of your symptoms and leaving the cause, or dealing with getting your nervous system back into balance? Which do you think would be more valuable to you? and you get them to make that answer, because when they do that, they become enrolled in it. What do they think is the best direction for them to go? And you do this at each step along the way. So when you first get them in, the ideal is to get them enrolled in that first level of stabilization care. We're going to get working with your nervous system. You're going to see your signs and symptoms decrease and probably even disappear. But remember, our goal is to get your nervous system back in balance, not just to get rid of your discomfort. And so when your discomfort ends, that's only the first step. And now you have to keep them enrolled in that. And you don't heavy sell this. What you do is you enroll them, then that's what happens when they set their own goals. Otherwise, you're just telling them, and they will follow you until they get what they want. So you need to change what they really want out of your care. You reset the intent of the care. All of a sudden, the patient comes in and goes like, wow, this has more value if I can stay well rather than getting sick and recovery and sick and recovery. I'd rather stay well, and now you've reset the intent of their care. Play the what is best game. Wait, do you want to wait until the car doesn't stop and then check the brakes? Is that a good idea? And you, again, get them to answer. Even though it's a silly question, they have to answer. Wait till the roof leaks and then fix it. Yeah, if you have high blood pressure and then you take pills, you think that's the way to deal with that? Or should we deal with it differently? Should you wait until you have a heart attack and then change your lifestyle? How about we change the lifestyle so you don't have a heart attack? Which do you think is of more benefit to you? Levels of information required. Pre-care, the consultation is very important. And you need to have that down in your office. That's when you change the direction of this. With the report, you now supply your new direction of the nervous system with your report saying, here's where your nervous system is out of balance. This is what we're going to focus on first of all. This is the care we're going to render to try to get that in place. The level 1 is just basic. Level 2 now is advanced, and this is the one that you need to be prepared to, while they're coming in for that basic care, you need to be explaining to them about once their systems are starting to show recovery, their nervous system is showing balance coming back, then what's available for them in the future to even make this better than just recovery? How can we improve it? Then level 3, lifestyles that are going to affect this. Level 4 would be, what other programs do you have in your office that support this? Are there other things that you have in your office that are going to help that patient move forward with improving their nervous system function? So that's sort of the first step, and that's what I want you to think about these articles, and we talk about this a lot within our program. I want you to think about what's happening with this, and the next time we're going to talk about how to increase the scope of your practice. This is going to be next Thursday at this time. How to increase the scope, not just seeing people with back pain and neck pain, because we've restricted ourselves down to this, to the point where that's all we're going to get. We need to blossom chiropractic once again and move forward with this. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you get something out of it. It's short and sweet. We've recorded this. It's going to be available so people can watch it over and over and over again. And you know that for those of you that have been to our training, you know that we go through some of the steps at the NeuroInfiniti training as to how to actually bring this into your practice and change the procedures. JD, I'm just wondering if we have anybody that has any questions or would like to make any comments.
If you have a question or would like to make a comment, please raise your hand in the control panel and I will unmute you. None so far, Dr. B.
Okay. Well, that's great. I hope that they got something out of this, and we look forward to having you on next Thursday at the same time, and we'll go through how to increase the scope of your practice, taking this information and moving it forward. So thank you for being on today.
Bye for now.